that he uses, I'm sure he'll be happy to help. While we've been talking, we've been joined by Bernhard. So welcome, Bernhard.
Hello.
And
from Berlin.
Bernhard is joining us from Germany, and he is the WordCamp 2020, WordCamp Europe 2020 lead. And we're really pleased to have him. And he's also going to be sharing some of his knowledge about a plugin that he likes too. So that leads me to say thank you very much to Steve Wood for preparing that and for sharing.
I would like to ask Steve one last question. Is that allowed?
Yeah,
Time's up now.
Have you finished? Well, I've got WordFence, but it just sits there basically, and I don't really look at it. Is that wrong? You know, it does whatever it does. I don't look at the warning messages or anything. Do you think that's unwise? I don't really.
No, because it's still doing a lot for you in the background. It'll block attacks and everything for you. If you're not looking at emails, they'll tell you what needs updating, plugins, what plugins need updating, or your themes.
Yeah.
But I mean, each time you log in, you can go and see that data anyway.
Yeah.
So it's better to install it and not do anything and let it do its good things in the background for you than not having it at all.
And the one thing I'd add to that is that WordFence does send you emails also if somebody's trying to log in. So it is sometimes worth having a look at those, but it does tell you that in the dashboard as well, as Steve has said. We have got a presentation in hopefully a couple of months on the plugin collective and some of their plugins, and hopefully once Bernhard has talked about his favorite plugin, he might be able to just say a few words about that too. Bernhard, are you happy to go on?
I can go on next. Should I present it or should I just talk about it?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay.
You're set up to share your screen. I've just checked. So if you'd like to do that, then please.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's best to show it because it's hard to describe.
Okay. Thank you.
So you should see my screen now. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So it's just a basic installation, not too much to see there, but the plugin I want to present is called Query Monitor. It was produced by John Blackburn, and it's maintained by him and many other contributors. And it's that little thing you see in the admin bar. And it's the one plugin I use quite a lot when I set up a new website and implement something, because it's showing you all the details about the website. For example, we are now on the main page, and we see which template is used on this page. Or when I go to a blog post, then you can see that there's another template used, in this case, the single PHP. And you can also see the time it took to load the website, the time it took for all the MySQL queries to the database. And once you click on any of those options, it's opening up a much more detailed view on all the things that's happening. So here, for example, you can see the templates file that could have been used, like the template hierarchy, and then you can see the actual template file that was picked up. And you see other files from the template that were included. Those are the template parts. You can see all the CSS classes that were added to the body class. And besides templating, you can get information about all the queries that were done to the database, the time it took to run them, where they originated from. You can see information about the blocks that were used on the website. In this case, it's just one paragraph, but you can see a detail of all the blocks. You can see all the JavaScript files that are embedded to the website, and the source, the dependencies, and all of that. The same you can see for styles. You can see external API calls if there were some. You can see capability checks that were made if you enable it. And you get some environment information. As we talked before about the PHP version, here you can see something. So the current PHP version, the version of the MySQL server, the version of WordPress itself, the version of your web server, and all the information you need in debugging a website. And the great thing is that it's not only working on the front end, but also on the back end. So even if you're in the back end and you're on a page and you don't know why something might be broken, you can also debug everything on the back end as well, just as in the front end. And you can even set a cookie and then you log off and you can still use it. So let's just do that, because usually the admin bar is only visible to the admin, but not to a normal website visitor. But sometimes you might have an issue where something is not working when you're not logged in. And then with that cookie, you can just, usually it's just on the bottom of the page, so you can just put it up. And now you can see everything as a normal visitor to your website. And you can do all the debugging as well. So this is really a plugin I would say I use on almost any site in development or on production, because when there is any issue with anything, Query Monitor usually shows you where it's going wrong. So I would say in 85% of the times I can figure out what's going wrong just by using Query Monitor. Okay, that's about it. Any questions about the plugin?
Have you ever noticed an ability to make an improvement because the queries are slow? Or do you hardly ever look at that anymore?
You mean the MySQL queries?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, when I see that a MySQL query is slow, this can really tell me which one is slow. You can filter by different types of queries. You can filter by the so-called caller, so which function is calling that query. The first one is the main query. So here you can see the main query that's producing that page. Let's open up a site, for example. So here you can see it's querying for a specific post ID. And this really helps to figure out which queries are slow, maybe how many rows are returned, things like that. So when you see a query that's taking a lot of time, but really shouldn't take so much time, then you can really dig into and see, okay, where is this function called? Can we maybe improve the query so it's not running that long? Can we maybe add an index to a database table so it's getting quicker? So I do that sometimes when plugins really load very slowly on the database side. And then I find ways to improve that.
Okay.
Drew, you got a question?
Muted.
Drew, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether it's something you leave running on live sites or only while you're developing.
I usually have it installed on live sites, but I don't necessarily activate it all the time. Mm-hmm. So I usually have it on live websites, at least when we just launched the website. So later on, I just deactivate and remove it. I can always install it from the plugin directory. But just after a launch, I usually have it installed. So I can see if everything is working the way it should be. And on my dev environments, I usually have it installed all the time.
Yeah.
Because you can see issues way before the client recognizes them on the website, especially if the memory consumption is quite high or queries are low or there are too many JavaScript or CSS files embedded or things like that. It's also telling you about PHP errors. I would assume I would not get some of them on this website. But if there's a notice or a warning in PHP, it will also show you that there's something wrong.
Okay.
I don't have it. So usually it's like the first line, it's either red or yellow, depending on the type of error. If you don't use English as your first language, you can also debug the languages. So you see which, okay, let's maybe just switch the website back to German. Because then you can also see if there are strings missing from plugins, or if there's just a single string that is missing. Mm-hmm. This is also a very common issue when you have a non-English website. There are some translation files missing, or some simple strings missing from the translations. Here you can see the, what is that? Okay, one of the Gutenberg files is missing. And so here you can see where it's called, and then you might find a way to provide such a file yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, here it's a bit more interesting. So now we have some API calls. So here you can see it's the version check for core and the plugins and themes that were done once I've logged in. There were some trains-ins updated. So the update core plugins and themes, whenever they check if there's a update available, they cache that information for some time, so they don't request it every time you log in. So here you can see a bit more that's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Looks a really useful plugin.
Yeah, I really like it. In the beginning, because like the name says, Query Monitor, it was just for MySQL queries.
Yeah.
But now it really evolves into like the debugging toolbox that many use.
I like the idea that you can see PHP errors without having to turn on debug equals true, because then that outputs it to everybody, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, unless you set also the debug log, so it logs that to a log file. Yeah. But then you have to protect that log file, because otherwise someone can just open up that log file through the URL, which is wp-content/debug.log. Mm-hmm. And having that log file open to public is also a security issue, because then they can see maybe information about the plugins you use, or some errors, and then they can guess which versions of plugins and themes you're using, and then knowing which of them have security issues, they can easily attack your website. Yeah. So having the debug log active on a live website is also not ideal, and with the debug option of Query Monitor, it's quite nice.
Yeah,
it's not as verbose as the debug log, but it will at least show you some warnings and errors.
Yeah. I shall definitely be loading this onto my next development site.
Thank you, Drew, and for the question, and Bernhard for answering it. I think Herb's just shared in the channel that Query Monitor is the 209th most popular plugin with over 2 million downloads. We can always rely on Herb to give us a really quick stats. So that's very useful. The other question that we've had just shared about the Query Monitor is it a paid version, and is it too complicated for somebody who's a beginner at working on their own sites? Bernhard, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, no, it's a free plugin. It's available in the plugin directory. And it really depends on what type of user you are to your website. So it's probably not something an editor or author would use, because it's really debugging the technical information of your WordPress installation. So it will show you any errors or things like that. So it's more for people maintaining a WordPress installation. So it's not really for the regular end user writing content to a website. But there are some information you can get out even if you're not a WordPress or plugin developer. There are some issues that are shown that are useful for you, like the information about the PHP and Java, MySQL and web server version and things like that. Some of those are also available in the health check, but some of those informations are not in health check. So there might be some more information.
I installed it, and I didn't understand it at all.
Okay.
I'd have to say, I mean, I can construct a WordPress website, and you know, I can write a bit of PHP, but I have no comprehension of what it's telling me. And you'd have to really understand how WordPress is built internally to be able to use this.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
Casual use, or it's not even for someone who, you know, who can build a WordPress website and install plugins and stuff like that. I really don't know what you can do with the information because I don't have the background knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a user who can create a child theme for your theme and customize some things, it might be useful because it will show you if something is going wrong. But if you're just installing plugins and themes and just customizing them with the settings, you're not going to use it for your workflow.
I created a child theme, and I'd write some PHP and stuff like that, and I still have no idea what it's telling you, or no idea what you can do with the information that it's telling you. You know, I don't know what I'd do if I had a SQL query that took a long time. I'd have no idea what in the world to do with that information.
Right, but let's say in your child theme you want to enqueue some JavaScript or CSS files, or you want to overwrite a template file like the single PHP or the archive PHP file, and it's just not working. Then with this plugin, you might figure out why the correct template file is not loading. So you see, okay, which are the files WordPress is trying to get, and if it's not catching the correct file, you might find out why that's the case. Maybe you have a typo in the file name or something like this. Also for those small things, it might be useful. I mean, there are hundreds of more options you probably don't need, but there are some you might want to use, even if you just write a child theme.
I absolutely agree with you that it means something to you. But I think it doesn't mean anything to me. And I perhaps if anybody else would like to join in, if other people here, I know that Herb understands it, and perhaps Drew does, but probably the rest of us don't. So I would say that you have to have a profound knowledge of how WordPress works in the background to be able to use this. And then, you know, it may be fantastic, but it's not for the vast majority of WordPress website people.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
It's more a technical tool. It's not for the majority of users.
Thanks for sharing that, Andrew, and Bernhard for taking those questions. I just wanted to check, has anybody else got any other questions? Scott, thank you. Can I take your question now?
Yeah. Hi, Bernhard. With the plugin, have you noticed that sometimes it can give you false positives? So like it's showing a slow query, but it's not a slow query.
Not really. I've never experienced that it's showing a slow query that is not really slow. And also the performance impact of the plugin itself is quite low. So some of the debugging plugins, they make some things very slow by debugging them.
Yeah.
And this plugin really has a very low impact on the overall performance.
Okay.
So you can really tell if a query is slow by itself.
Yeah, because that's kind of where I was trying to get that question to go to. Because obviously I've seen some before, and you're like, well, just installing this single plugin has made my site worse to try and debug the problem I had in the first place. So you end up uninstalling the plugin, and you're no closer to fixing the problem in the first place.
Yeah. There are even some API functions where you can add information to the query monitor. So let's say you want to debug something, and instead of doing a print R or an echo somewhere in your code, you can use an action from the query monitor, and you can send debugging information to the query monitor, either as a notice, a warning, an error, even structured things like a table. So you can send some information from your custom code to the query monitor and debugging it in the query monitor instead of echoing it like right away to the browser or writing something to a log file and then debugging it from there. So this is really handy when you are in the process of developing something and you want to debug something. And you can also easily do that on a production site. So let's say it's just happening on a production side, using those API functions from Query Monitor, you can really just dump that information into the Query Monitor plugin, and no one who's not able to see the Query Monitor plugin will see those information. That's really handy.
That's nice.
I don't use it that often, but there were some times where I really had an issue finding something because it was just happening on the live website, and with those actions, it was really easy to find those.
Yeah.
Has John yet found a way of running Query Monitor against AJAX requests and REST API, REST requests?
To be honest, I'm not really sure how they show up. It also depends a bit on the AJAX request, how they are done. I don't think that you can debug all the same information in an AJAX or REST call.
I don't think you'd be able to get the AJAX stuff out.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, for those things, you probably need a different method to debug. It's not like, maybe some of you know Symfony and the debugging tool from them. They have something that is quite similar to the Query Monitor, and there you can debug any request, so even AJAX calls, but this is not the same for the Query Monitor. So I'm not aware of any plugin helping you with that.
Well, stay on this call.
Thank you, Bernhard, and for taking those questions. Had a couple of other questions, and I will share those with you, Bernhard, as we go on, because not everyone wants to raise them in the main channel. So if that's okay, I'll send them. I'll send them to you. So thank you very much for joining us and helping, and we hope you'll stay on and listen to the next presentation, and we'll invite you back again to talk about WordCamp Europe. So I now have the great pleasure